Alright, so for this programming activity, we're going to create a program that will contain a one-dimensional array that will store 10 elements of the data type double. Your program must calculate the average and sum, as well as find the largest and smallest number entered by a user. So I'm sure you can find the average and sum for values or elements in an array pretty easily. All right. Adding to this, though, we are going to also find the largest and smallest number that was entered by a user. So we'll be accepting user input. All right. So let's go over to NetBeans, create a project. Let's call the project one dimensional. All right. All right. Finish. All right. Let me just get rid of this. I don't need this. All right. So remember again, our program is supposed to have a one-dimensional array, and the elements that are being stored in our one-dimensional array must be entered by the user, right? Which means that we will need to accept input from the user. So we're going to import our Java scanner class. So import java.util dot scanner. All right. All right. So let's go ahead now and create some variables. All right. First thing, I'll create the array first. So I'm going to go ahead and create an array. Remember, the type is double. So we say double square bracket, name of the array. I'm calling this array R number. All right. Set this equal to new double. And we're going to be storing 10 elements or 10 values. All right. So let's right. So the next thing you want to do now is to just create some variables to store the sum, the average, largest number in the array, and the smallest number in the array. So I'm going to say double sum. I'm going to initialize this to 0.0, double average as well. I'm going to initialize this to 0.0 just because I can. I'm going to create two other variables now, one to store the largest value and one to store the smallest value in the array. So I'm going to name this large, quite original. I'm going to set this now equal to the first location or the first index of the array, which means that this will be set equal to R number index position 0. All right, so further on in the program, you'll see where we will basically be comparing all the values that are coming into the array to what is actually stored in the first position. All right, so it's a way of keeping track of which number is the largest. All right, and it will be a similar thing as well to basically track and see which number is the smallest being entered into the array, into this particular array. All right, so we say double small. And as I said, we're going to initialize this to the first position in the array. All right. All right. Let me just make provisions for us to use the scanner now. So I'm going to create a scanner object. Say scanner input equal new scanner. And we're accepting input from the keyboard into our console application. So it's system.in. Now let's use a for loop to allow the users to enter the 10 numbers into the array. So we're going to say for int count, initialize count to 0, set the condition as count less than, I could say less than 10 here, but I'm just going to say less than the array, or less than the length of the array, I should say. So less than the array length. Right? And then we're going to increment this by 1. So it's count plus plus. Alright, so let's print out a little message to the user. So let's say system dot out dot println. We could simply say enter a number. Alright. Now we now want to accept this number into our array that we created. So remember the array name is array R, it's R number. Right? Alright, so we're going to pass count here. So by placing count inside the square bracket here, it will keep track of each position of the array, or each index value for this particular array. So remember, count will start at 0, and arrays in Java, they are 0 base. So when count is 0, it will enter the value into the index position 0, and then when count increments, it will become 1, and then the value will be stored in index position 1, and it will continue until we reach the end of the loop. All right, it's equal to input dot next. This is double figures we want. All right, so I could put the sum and to check for which number is the smallest and the largest inside this for loop, but I'm going to use a separate for loop for that. All right, use a different for loop for that. So let's say for int count equal 0, the condition will be count less than, and I could still say less than the array number that length, but just to show you that it would still work, I'm going to put less than 10, and then increment count by 1. All right. All right. So we're going to use. So before we even calculate the sum and the average, we're going to check first for the smallest and the largest numbers that were entered in the array. So inside our for loop, we're going to put a nice little if statement. So we're going to say if the array name, which is our number, I should say our number, count. Again, remember count in the square bracket here is just keeping track of each index position within the array. And again, count starts at 0. All right. So if the first value entered is greater than large, then naturally this would now become the larger number. All right. So we'll now assign large is equal to whatever is being stored at this position. All right, so we're going to say that if what is being stored at the whatever position count is at the moment, starting off it will be 0. So if the value that is at index position 0 is greater than large, remember we had initialized large, all right. So if it's greater than large, we'll now do some assignment and assign that value or assign this value at array at count at the count position, we'll assign that to large. Right? And we can do an else. Alright, so checking this time to see if whatever is at index position count, right? We're checking to see if it is less than small, then naturally it now becomes the value for small. Alright? It now becomes the smallest. Alright. Alright, so if statement, okay. Alright, so we can go ahead now and calculate the sum. So sum is equal to sum plus the values in the array And count again is used to dynamically keep track of the different array positions. Alright. So we don't have to say R number 0 in the square bracket or R number 1 in the square bracket. Count right here will dynamically keep track of the different index position for our array. That's the sum. Let's calculate the average now. So the average is equal to sum. I guess I can divide it by the length of the array, or I could just divide it by 10, whichever one would work. So I'm going to just divide it by the length of the array. Alright, now to just do some display. Alright, so I'm going to first display the smallest number in the array. So the smallest number is whatever is being stored in the variable called small. Alright, we're going to do the same thing for large, for the largest number. The largest number is whatever is being stored in a variable called large. And then we're going to display the sum and then the average. All right. And then now to display the average. All right, and that looks like our code. All right, so we can see if this actually works. So I run this. Oh, did I close all my? Okay, all right. All right, so let's enter some numbers. So I'm entering 2, 3, 12, 43, 5, 0, 13, 14, 65, 67, 56. Alright, so it tells us that the smallest number is 0. Well, 0, 0.0 because we're dealing with an array with type double. So it will naturally convert those to, right, we'll naturally convert these to double. And if you remember, we had created small, large, sum and average as double. Alright. So as you can see, the smallest number entered is actually 0, and the largest number entered is actually 67. We will add 2 plus 3 plus 12 plus 43 plus 5 plus 0 plus 13 plus 14 plus 67 plus 56. We'll get 215. We divide that by the length of the array, which is 10. All right, and we'll get 21.5. So our program does work. All right. So again, we created our array of type double to store 10 values. We created the necessary variables. All right. Now, for the variable that we call large, it will store the largest value in the array. And similarly to how we initialize sum as 0, we'll also initialize large to the first element within the array. And then we'll now check if all the other elements being entered in the array is greater than the first element that was entered. And then if it's greater than the next element and the next element, so we can keep track of which number is the largest. And it's the same thing that we did for small. So we'll basically check against the first element that was entered, and then we check against the second element, and so on and so forth, to see which number was the smallest that was entered. All right, so we use a for loop to accept the user input for them to input the values in the array. And then we went ahead, we created another for loop, and this time we place an if statement in there to basically control which element or which number will be seen as the largest. And we did the same thing to see which number entered will be the smallest. And then we just simply calculate the sum and the average, and then we display. All right. So again, this is the activity to create a program that will contain a one-dimensional array that will store 10 elements of type double. Your program must calculate the average and sum, as well as find the largest and smallest number entered by a user. And that is indeed what our program did. So I would say you can watch the video, or before even seeing the complete, well, at this point you'd have seen the complete program. But you can watch the video, then just go back to the question and think about it, right? And see if the program code actually matches up to how you were thinking about the solution for this question or for this problem statement. All right, so just do that for me, and until I make another video, I will see you